So just going through a labor force participation rate, unemployment rate calculation with real numbers from 2016. So you can see the Bureau of Labor Statistics surveyed the population, and then they dumped people into one of three baskets: the employed basket, the unemployed basket, and not in the labor force basket. So just setting up the unemployment rate statistic, remember that the unemployment rate is really the percentage of the labor force that's not being utilized. So how do you figure out labor force again? You just take the employed plus unemployed, you add those two together, that will give you labor force. And then on the top of the equation, it'll be the number of unemployed, in this case 7.8 million, divided by the labor force times 100. So the next slide really shows you the setup for each calculation, so let's go to it. And what you see here is they figured out the labor force, which is like your labor resource in the economy. Remember, not every single person's part of the labor resource. Like a, retiree, they're not really part of the labor resource anymore in the economy because they're elderly. So for the unemployment rate, here's the setup. You can see that you take the labor force right here, and that's on the bottom of the equation. On the top is the number of unemployed people, which in this case was 7.8 million, and then times 100 to make it a percent. You get the unemployment rate is 4.9%. Just a little point on what this 4.9% means. This means that 4.9% of your labor force is not being utilized. If we use the machinery example, that would be like 4.9% of your machines that could run are currently not running. So I think it's helpful to remember what the unemployment rate is really calculating. It's not based off the whole adult population. There's a lot of adults that you wouldn't want to be even considering as part of the unemployment rate because they really can't work anymore. Then when we look at the labor force participation rate, we need the whole population. So the way to figure this out is that you have to say, okay, people are dropped in one of three buckets. So to get the total population, you just add all three buckets together. We already added two of the buckets together up here for the labor force, the employed plus unemployed bucket. And now you just add in the not in labor force bucket, and you get a total population of 253.4 million. Remember, this is adult population 16 or older. And then the labor force participation rate, the number of people participating in the labor force out of the adult population. So you take the labor force, divide it by the adult population, and you get 62.7%. That means 62.7% of the adult population is either working or looking for work, basically participating in the labor market. Typically, we like to see high labor force participation rates and relatively low unemployment rates.